You can define your thoughts. You don't like these thoughts, don't think them. Like a Lego. You want to construct something, you have a variety of these things. You choose. No, it's not useful. For this, what I'm building is not useful. It doesn't matter, it pops. No, I select it, I look at it. No, not for this one. This will work. See? In meditation, we see the process of deconstruction of thought and reconstruction of thought. It's beautiful. The value of Samadhi in relation to Samavesha. This is we're entering, of course, not speculative, but we're entering this, let's say, higher, more advanced realm of understanding, and we don't want, as it were, to walk outside the room and start shouting at this on the street, right? Lest we can get confused someone. This has to be taken with a pinch of salt. Samadhi is indeed the eighth limb of yoga. Samadhi is indeed the crowning experience of meditation. Samadhi is part of that coveted altogether, always, right? That, remember? Samyama, who remembers that in previous studies? Right? Samyama, Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi. Samyama, always together, coming together, forming a unit. Samyama of Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi. Dharana, concentration, meaning funneling. Not concentration when we're doing something finicky. That's not the kind of concentration. Concentration is simply funneling our attention towards something. Whatever you need to do, you need to put a thread in through the ear of the needle, that's a concentration, right? You need to sit down and compose an email, that's a concentration. You need to cook a meal, a ratio of water, basmati rice, beautifully so it doesn't overcook, it's a concentration. That's dharana. Immediately followed by what? Dhyana. What is dhyana? Dhyana, dhyan, becomes chan in China, becomes zen in Japan. Dhyana. Uninterrupted flow of awareness towards an object, as defined by Patanjali Sutra. Uninterrupted flow of awareness towards an object. In brackets we could add of meditation. That's what dhyana is. And samadhi is a state of integration or cessation of the fluctuation of the mental tendencies. Again, that's paying respect to the Patanjali Yoga Sutras. Cessation of the fluctuation of the mental tendencies. Integration. Synthesis. And in Patanjali Yoga Sutra, they form very important 3-in-1. Samyama. So the whole Vibhuti-pada on the largest part of the Patanjali Sutras deals with that, how to cultivate and hone these powers, Vibhutis, Vibhuti-pada. And it's all to do with the skillful application of samyama, of concentration, meditation, absorption. So this now, samadhi here is understood, as it is understood, let's say, within that tradition where Patanjali Yoga stems from, that, right? It's beautifully and neatly connected to Samkhya Yoga. Patanjali Sutras are dualistic, and dualistic for a reason. It is their purpose. The purpose of the sutras here is to exalt the state of kaivalya, aloneness. So the Vibhuti-pada, of course, deals with a very specific part, which I often bring as a reminder that the last pada, the fourth chapter, opens up with the first line, those to be abandoned, or those to be renounced. All those powers that are dealt with in the Vibhuti-pada are to be renounced. Because they are not the goal. They are not the goal. The goal will be expounded in this last chapter. So Samadhi, of course, in the system of Samkhya is considered to be as the ultimate state for the yogis. But not so in relation to how it is viewed in the system of Kashmir Shaivism. And the distinction is made, or consciously made distinction, is because of that aforementioned correlation between samadhi and deep sleep. So the deep sleep itself, the samadhi itself does not bring liberation. You see? Samadhi here has a distinctive purpose to neutralize all that what is at the root cause of all mental fluctuations, is to eradicate vikalpa, is to redress vikalpa. And the only way to do it, there's a scriptural reference, is to roast the seeds. They're still there, they're fine, they look like seeds, but they are impotent. They made impotent, they cannot produce crops. That's what the importance of samadhi in a given system represents here. Patanjali Yoga posed a lot of polemics among scholars, not just Indologists, but even today, because of its applicability, usability, right? Is it a philosophical compound, which is, by the way, the shortest one out there, without any gloss, without any elaboration? It would comprise a very slim brochure. It's the shortest known scripture. But is it at all useful or not? How is it useful for us common folk? So these polemics are being held, of course, in terms of what does it hold? Does it hold just that importance as that input into the rich oikimen, or landscape of philosophical systems that Indian subcontinent is known for? There is even a book that I came across some years ago, published by State University of New York, which was entitled The Otherworldly Yoga, something like that. I'll try to remember. By Grishmpun. Does name rings the bell to anyone? No? As a scholar. And you could feel the frustration in the author, in the scholar, confronted with that scripture. Frustration that it basically supposed to eat away the one who reads, the one who is given to that scripture. So it's supposed to deconstruct the one who is given to the study of that. If one is to truly follow, then it's a kind of a suicide, psychological suicide. And that's his analysis, is that as a Westerner, he is capitulating and admitting at the face of greatness, extraordinary precision, succinct way of how it is expressed, and the unparalleled level of conviction, convincingly drawing argument, and yet he realizes that it's impossible for him to embrace. You see? So this is admonition, at least in a Grishpon, I think. There are many. The Patanjali Yoga Sutras enjoyed many different, not just like in the last 30 years. Now, at some point I was very interested to read not just the very classical examples like Swami Hirarananda, that also is published by State University of New York, which goes back to early part of the 20th century, which goes into great scrutiny of particularly the first part, the psychology of Patanjali Sutras, the psychology of it. See, where it's like deals with this content of thoughts, that content of all these impressions, vasanas, psychic imprint. Now, samadhi by itself is not what brings liberation. And that what was clearly brought forth by the exposition of the Trika Shaiva masters to bring this clarity there. So if someone is expecting to come out of samadhi enlightened, then they are in for basically a certain loop, because the individuality itself, no matter how many times it is seen for what it is, this is where Abhinavagupta, when he goes through, you can enter samadhi for how many times as you will, and for how long, period of time. Each time you come out of samadhi, even if this is the ultimate state of samadhi in a sense of absorption, like Nirvikalpa samadhi, you still reclaim that what is the whole structure of Antakarana. We spoke about it the other day. So in other words, yogi who may be in samadhi for a very long period of time, there are documentaries made, there are accounts of that, they come and they unseal that cave, they unseal that hut, that place, and the body is in a total state of homeostasis, self-preservation. There are no metabolic activity whatsoever, and gradually they bring that body, as it were, back to life. Of course, life never left the body. Life force was in the body. The nails grew, the hair grew, right? And it takes a slow, like, of course, there's in most cases, atrophy of a lot of muscles taking place. And so, like, they need to learn to swallow. Or you read the accounts of the saints and sages of closer to our time, let's say, who have been, whose bodies were sustained in samadhi by feeding them with ghee and milk. Like if you read some of the life of someone like Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, he was known for entering prolonged samadhis, prolonged, like maybe for a week or two, right? His body would be sustained by giving some fluids, just like literally, he would be. So, but that samadhi itself does not bring about that what in Kashmir Shaivism, let's say in Trika Shaivism, spoken of as the self-recognition, which is identity with Shiva. And the limitations of that are precisely in the mechanics that samadhi itself, as a state, is a state. So it does not have in itself anything that will alter consciousness to the degree, no matter how many times one would see oneself through all this, through the story first, through the thoughts, through all that, because all that is settles down and one can see and experience oneself, and all this different movements of prana begins to take place, right? By the time the main, let's say, move and shake here, when Udana prana takes up and then changes into the all-pervasive Dhyana that in everyone on a daily basis experiences, that what gives this sense of vitality and connection with the extremities and everything, is now being brought out into all-pervasiveness with everything. So when that prana Dhyana, prana vayu takes place, then Dhyana vayu takes place, then this is known for that you are beyond the body, beyond the mind, beyond the senses. This sense of all-pervasiveness may be accompanied by different degrees of bliss. Again, the Kashmir Shaivism describes in minute detail each bliss, from Nirananda to Jagadananda, all them depending on the movement of the prana. But that in itself does not bring that complete and utter transfiguration of what is spoken in terms of how awareness conceals itself in the experience of Nara, in the experience of individual. So that act of self-recognition only takes place through the agency of Shakti. And this is where Tantrism of Shaivites is an apologetic in terms of the supremacy of Samavesha over Samadhi. So of course Samadhi is mastered because Vikalpas need to be seen through and eradicated. One needs to see this, the process of thought formation itself. It's very, very liberating to see how thought forms and how thought dissolves. So this is the mastery of Samadhi. There are different degrees, of course, of Samadhi. In applicable terms, we only speak really of Nirvikalpa and Savikalpa, with the distinction that Savikalpa Samadhi is with the presence of some frequencies where filters are there still providing some input. In other words, you are in a state of absorption, in a state of Savikalpa Samadhi, but you have some traces of awareness of being in a room, in some particular space. So in other words, the sensory input is not cut off completely. This process of Nirvikalpa did not take place. You are not completely drawn in. And that in itself has its own benefits. It was, to my knowledge and to my memory, one of the first encounters I had with balancing the act, or rather reconciling the importance of Savikalpa Samadhi with Nirvikalpa Samadhi was done by Swami Muktananda, because he as a yogi with great experiences, as a Siddha, he pointed out that for us modern people on the go, for whom spiritual practices are done in combination with the daily activities, is more beneficial than giving occasionally to Nirvikalpa Samadhi, because the way nervous system functions in Savikalpa Samadhi is closer to the way we function in state of wakefulness. Whereas if we are to go into Nirvikalpa Samadhi, and some have that knack, greater ease, they have to relearn when they come out of that. Coming out of Nirvikalpa Samadhi, it takes a while to get repossession of basic general body-mind coordination. Because when you're in a complete state of absorption, that's what's taking place. It's as if certain skills need to be relearned. So the gap, the transitory, is always longer. The longer you are in Nirvikalpa Samadhi, the longer it takes to come out to function normally. Whereas if you are in Savikalpa Samadhi, you are still in Samadhi, you are experiencing all the benefits of Samadhi. But the transitory phase is not as jarring. You see, this was extraordinary, because when I read about it in Swami Muktananda, I had these already experiences of my own. Experiences when I would come out of meditations when they were completely and utterly incapacitate me. I wouldn't even know, not that I wouldn't know, that there was no hunger, no thirst. There's no propensity to do. You like a, forgive me, you walk around like, not quite a zombie, but you are in that state of a whatever. Best not to receive friends for tea during that time, because they will start really taking care of you right away. Because you do not come across as a very, very corresponsive individual, right? You blank completely. And there are reasons for that. Whereas in Savikalpa Samadhi, it's as if there was an overlapping of territory. There was absorption, but the nervous system still had that part in it that was still functioning by allowing something filtering through, some sound, some information, some frequency. That's what it means, Savikalpa, with. Or if you read maybe some other word, it will be Samprajnata Samadhi. That's how it will be addressed, but it's the same thing. Other forms of Samadhi, we don't talk about them because they are on the way to Samadhi. On the way to Samadhi, these are distinctive, let's say, how you can know where you're going and how it can be experienced, like that, in a way of transcending the thought. How that thought is being transcended. Not to complicate things. Sometimes it feels as if you are submerging into something, and it's literally have this feeling as if you're going somewhere down. You see, it almost can be even accompanied somatically by that sensation of like this, you see? At other times, it can be accompanied by the sensation as if you are elevated, as if you are lifted off, like as if you are about to take off out of your body. You are like light, become very light. In both cases, the thought becomes abstract. And the skill here is very simple. What distinguishes experienced meditator from someone who kind of didn't quite grok it is that when thought becomes abstract is where to let go fully. But what happens is that It's like, it was concrete. A whole elephant procession, a whole here, this and that, sounds, tambourines, everything. I'm just giving this metaphorical language, right? And suddenly it's like, is it an elephant or a giraffe or is it a camel, right? Like it's become more abstract, it's become less defined, it becomes more like a cloud. So instead of going with that disillusion, we suddenly follow the propensity of the thought to adjust the lens as when we take a picture. What was that? Right? In meditation. Some feeling coming to the surface, but it's abstract. It's not associated with an object of experience. That's the beauty of meditation, is that we can see the separation. You see that separation. We go beneath that whole tattvic strata of how it all cascades down. The constituency of Maya. The 10 indriyas, right? Gyanindriyas, Karmindriyas, Tanmatras, and Mahabhutas. It's all fixed like that. All fixed, every sense corresponding to something what we experience on the physical plane through organs of cognition. Every emotion corresponds to something which considers to be the object of that experience. And here it is dislodged. Enjoy that. Zoom into that gap of where it's dislodging taking place. I'm speaking about practical aspect. You are annoyed or happy about something, and you start looking for a reason. I'm feeling so great. Oh, it must be because there is there is like a, increase in salary, or like in this grade. It's like reasons. We want reasons. This is the domain of how it is not. It is not linked to anything. And knowing that is life lived in freedom. Experiencing everything. This is what I wanted to touch in Chamatkar, in however limiting ways that available to me, right? That in Chamatkar, in that book, that all these emotions, these rasas, the legitimate experiences, this range of these registers of color are lit by the same light, one translucent light. We don't assign positive or negative qualities to the colors of the rainbow. But when we experience emotions, we immediately associate them because of this, because of that. And the psychological tension is then tightened. Reasons are given. See? Reasons for my unhappiness. Likewise, reasons for my happiness. How about miserable for no reason, happy for no reason, to begin with? Try that. Try roll with that. You will see an extraordinary thing. So that is experienced in meditation, and this not trying to adjust the lens is a skill. The skill is to see where a trail of thought ends, and before another trail of thought begins, there is a gap, always a gap. Unless we're already gone mad. Then the gap is so short, it feels there's no gap. It's like thought finishes, immediately another one begins. There is still a gap, but it's imperceptible. We don't want that. So whenever there is a thought process, there is always end of one trail of thought, and then before another one begins, all you need to do is to wait till that trail of thought ends, and you fall into the gap. That's all. That's all. Learning, knowing that's the skill in action. Skill in terms of how you think. You can define your thoughts. You don't like these thoughts, don't think them. Like a Lego. You want to construct something, you have a variety of these things. You choose. No, it's not useful. For this, what I'm building is not useful. Doesn't matter, it pops. I select it, I look at it. No. not for this one. This will work. See? In meditation, we see the process of deconstruction of thought and reconstruction of thought. It's beautiful. And Samadhi here, going back to, because we keep drifting in and out of that, the Samavesha, of course, is an entirely different process altogether. And Samavesha is spoken here of both as a process and as a state. So Samavesha of Shaivites is the power of awareness, these archetypal forces when they take over, when that communion with a particular power takes place, when that communion is established. It doesn't happen on 24/7. One can be in Samavesha, it's like a dancer. You have your morning class, and then you go for your daily activity, whatever. Then you have another, let's say, learning of a new role. And then evening comes and there's a performance. See? Morning, and all of them are connected. In the morning class, you stretch the limbs, music, rhythm, you keep your body. I'm talking about classical dance. Any classical dance requires keeping up with the body being, because the body is an instrument of expression. It just simply feels fitting. And in any case, Abhinavagupta's example is that with ballerina. It's just used in a sense, in the context of the classical Indian dance. The dancer comes on stage and she performs. But before she comes on stage in the evening performance, when she's fully dressed, wearing a makeup and all that, fragrance, everything, the ambience and atmosphere, there are these phases where she's stretching the body in the morning, preparing, right? Going back in the afternoon to learn this role again. And then comes evening performance. And she performs. In the moment of performance, she disappears. She is no longer so-and-so. That power of transformation is complete. In that moment of performance, the performer, the dancer, fuse. There's no distinction. Subject, object, dynamic is so intimate that you cannot tell them apart. Only dance. And that's what Samavesha is here, in that example. That's why that semi-poetic expression in Tantra Loka, Abhinavagupta exclaims, she comes on stage and performs the dance and reaches that point where it brings the catharsis to the spectator, one and only. Here, of course, we speak of Shiva. And when the dance is performed, she is off the stage. Act is over. See? So this theatrical, dramatic allusion here is given to this, what we have spoken earlier, in more, let's say, philosophical, clinical perspective of Samyama, of Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi, right? In that trinity of funneling the attention and creating an uninterrupted flow and integration. So there is similarity, of course, between Samyama of Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi and Samavesha. The only difference is that in the case of the absorption, dancer regains the traces of her personality. But in the case of Samavesha, the dancer no longer knows, eventually, herself anymore from the role that she performs on stage. So when the Samavesha is complete, that act, that role that she enacts here, by virtue of being repossessed, taken over by the power of the goddess, is then becomes her natural state. You see?